Welcome to ALTÉRRA Focus, a new series as part of our broader ALTÉRRA dialogues where we engage in focused conversations with global leaders, investors, journalists and thinkers to explore the forces that are influencing decisions being made today, in boardrooms, in the halls of government, and in the markets, and shaping the future. At ALTÉRRA, we believe meaningful dialogue plays a critical role in understanding challenges, but in identifying where the real opportunities lie. We want to bring together the people steering capital, setting strategy, and reading the signals and trends that the world is trying to pass. In this series, we will explore with our guests and with you how these leaders are navigating complexity in real time across geopolitics, energy systems, communities, global markets and trends to get a clearer vision of how they see the future unfolding. I'm pleased to be joined today at our inaugural session of our Focus series by General David Petraeus, a retired four-star U.S. Army general and former director of the CIA, who is a partner at KKR, chairman of KKR Middle East, and chair of the KKR Global Institute, which he founded to bring geopolitical and macroeconomic analysis into the firm's investing thinking. Alongside that, he is an active venture investor, sits on a number of corporate boards, and remains deeply engaged as a writer and academic on global affairs. It is a career that has moved across the world of government, security, and capital, and few people are better placed to help us read the moment we are in today. General Petraeus brings a unique perspective shaped at the intersection of global security, geopolitics, and investment strategy. General, it's really a pleasure to have you today.
It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much for
the honor of being the first of these.
Yeah, and we're really proud to have you with us, so thank you. You talked about strategy. You talked about how that shapes our decision-making. And importantly, we saw how you think as a leader. And what I would like to hear from you in this conversation today is how you think about leadership in these times of turbulence, of challenging conflict, and just to get your thoughts on how you think about the world in these times.
Well, if you'll remember in the book, my co-author Andrew Roberts, Lord Roberts of Belgravia now, and I lay out in the introduction an intellectual construct for the exercise of strategic leadership. That's the leadership at the very top. It's what you exercise here at ALTÉRRA, for example. It's when I was commanding the surge in Iraq or in Afghanistan or CIA director. And the reason it's useful to sketch that out is because everybody's trying to help that leader succeed. But there are four tasks in this construct, far and away the most important of which is that you have to get the big ideas right up front. In other words, you have to craft the right strategy. You have to understand the situation in a very granular fashion, a nuanced, a deep, again, appreciation for the various elements of the context and so forth, and then craft the right strategy, get the big ideas right. You then have to communicate the big ideas effectively through the breadth and depth of the organization and to all who have a stake in the outcome of the endeavor. Third task is you have to oversee the implementation of the big ideas because, of course, you're not executing them yourself. You're overseeing the execution. You have to hire the best and brightest. You have to provide an example, inspiration, energy. You allow those not measuring up to move on to something else. The organizational architecture for this endeavor, the metrics you use to determine whether you're making progress or experiencing setbacks, and then how the leader spends his or her time is really critical. That shows your priority, obviously. It's how you drive the execution of a campaign plan that stems from the big ideas. And then the fourth task is facilitated by events on your battle rhythm, on your calendar of recurring events and activities, where you sit down and you are forced, in some cases, you force yourself or enabled by your activities to identify how you need to refine the big ideas as the situation evolves, as you experience progress or setbacks, and then to do it again and again and again. And that's the process of strategic leadership. This is a prism, and I think we can look at the various issues that you want to discuss often by asking what are the right big ideas. And of course, we're constantly doing that at KKR. And frankly, I've been with the firm as it's evolved from $83 billion under management 13 years ago to approaching $800 billion under management now. And how have we done that? New big ideas and execution of the existing big ideas ever better and better. So that's the key. And again, I think we'll come back to this particular construct and the imperative of getting the big ideas right.
What I really loved about your book was exactly that, how you had boiled down what is essentially a very chaotic and complex system into some simple principles. And I think that it's very interesting as well how you apply that now in your current role
Very much.
in more of a business setting. And so as we discuss, I'd love to hear your thoughts more on how you deal with that those moving goalposts. If you will.
We're constantly asking, for example, and KKR Global Institute is a big part of this. What are the new emerging investment themes? Where are the new opportunities? New big ideas. And so we're constantly looking at that. We ask ourselves periodically, where should we be investing that we're not?
As you know, we recently announced a partnership with KKR, ALTÉRRA, and we feel very, very excited about that because of what you offer and the perspective that KKR offers, and particularly KKR's experience around the world. And that's something that I think we value a lot in the partnership and we feel very excited about. Obviously, we're seeing geopolitical tensions, supply chain shifts, and energy dynamics increasingly shape investment decisions and long-term value creation. How does the way you assess these developments as an investor differ from your approach in previous leadership roles? So how do you think about these things differently today?
Well, you just have a different mission. In the military, the mission was to achieve security and stability in a country, literally to pull it out of a civil war. Well, here, what we're trying to do is identify new opportunities and then make the most of them, frankly. And ideally, to identify them earlier than others, capitalize them on them quicker. And we have a pretty good track record in that. Inevitably, there are some similar firms that get this right before others. But it's about how you do over time, and are you doing better than the others most of the time, which will obviously propel you pretty impressively.
Do you see that happening through your relationships? Is that through data collection? Is it about the reach that KKR and you have as you travel around the world?
It's all of that feeds into it. There's no substitute for boots on the ground.
Right.
I traveled to 30 different countries last year.
I know you travel a lot. Yeah.
And many of them more than one time. In the UK, I think I was there 6 or 8 times alone. So that just still counts as one country. We do that, though, because, again, we're trying to understand in a granular way the current situation. It really helps to be there and talk to the government leaders, the financial leaders, other investors. But it also helps with relationships because one of KKR's jobs, the most important task, is to identify geopolitical risk during the diligence process and ensure we can sufficiently mitigate those risks. We do the same with the macro team and the public policy team. And occasionally raise your hand if we cannot do that and say this is not a deal that we should do. We don't do it often. It's maybe 6 times in 13 years. But when we do it, it really matters. But the second task is helping our companies when they run into problems that they can't resolve themselves. And that's where relationships, contacts, understanding can come into play. So we're doing that. But you're really asking is more of the intellectual question of what do we see as new developments that are going to have investment implications. And I'll give you a handful of examples. You mentioned supply chains. Well, we used to see companies in the days when supply chains were not being disrupted. They could be counted on, really very reliable. You had just-in-time logistics. In other words, you want the parts, the components to arrive just before you actually need them in the assembly line or the manufacturing facility. Now, because of all the disruptions, COVID, wars, et cetera, you have to have just-in-case logistics. So we're back in the world of warehouses, and you have to have iron mountains ahead of time because you don't know if you're going to run out. And the world's seeing that quite significantly, what they used to get from the Gulf, far more than just crude oil, LNG, distillates, and petroleum products. It's much, much more than that. I mean, helium comes out of here. That's how you etch, and in the chip making process, and much, much more, fertilizer, all the rest. So you're seeing that play out now. The reserves are being drawn down. But what we're looking for always is the long-term trends.
We knew already that the energy demand globally that was coming simply from development in the third world, in developing countries, the growth in populations, their improvement in their standard of living. And so can you talk a little bit about how you see energy? You know, this is something that ALTÉRRA thinks about all the time. We invest primarily in clean energy, and we're very interested in that landscape. Can you talk a little bit about how you and KKR see this space and what the future holds for energy?
What we see, again, the big idea here is that there's going to be an enormous amount of energy that we really didn't anticipate being required, I'd say 3 years ago. I don't think anybody forecast the demand as you see this explosion in the establishment of data centers and ever bigger data centers. And then how are they going to get it off the grid? Will that make the normal homeowner's electricity bill go up? Do they do a bespoke? So again, there's a lot of this. And you may know we have something like 200 data centers already, and there's probably another 100 or 200 literally being planned and built. We're also in the cooling system business, although we just exited Cool IT or Cool It with the 15X, which was wonderful, which also just shows the demand again for this. And then, as I mentioned, we're very big in energy management, transmission. It's storage as well as another. So if you look at the components of this, storage jumps out also because a lot of the energy sources are producing during a certain time of the day or a certain weather condition, either sunshine, wind, or other activity that is generating that electricity, but it may not be needed at that time. So how do you store it in the meantime? And then, of course, how do you manage it and all the rest of this? And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in all of these different areas. We're keenly aware of the challenges of global warming. What's that doing? What are the implications of that in a variety of ways? But still, there's going to be a need for fossil fuels, and it's going to be an increasing need. You know, people keep forecasting that demand is going to go down, and then 2 years later, maybe not then. It's a little bit like some of these others that they say, is this coming? Well, it's not. It just keeps getting pushed out.
So we have to think smarter about how we use the energy.
Very much. There's no question
how we
about
make
that.
sure that it's
energy conservation.
Exactly.
I mean, even just smart grid.
Right.
A lot of energy is lost in the transmission in the United States. We have old transmission systems. Those need to be updated. So that's an aspect of conservation that people don't normally think about.
Right.
And yet that is certainly required. And of course, obviously, with fossil fuels, to do it better, cleaner, less impact, cleaner, all the rest of this, that, watching very carefully for some of the most pernicious, the methane gas in particular, as an example. But it is going to have to be all of the above. So you obviously want to do it, again, as clean as you can do it. You see some other major capitals around, often in the global south, where they're facing a choice, and inevitably they do have to get energy. They have to provide electricity. That's what's pulling people out of poverty, giving them new opportunities. So it's a constant effort to ensure that you're adding the kind of energy that's required. You're doing it, again, as thoughtfully as you can. One of the lessons out of this also, the Gulf is going to reopen. The Strait will reopen at some point. But there's going to be a bit of hedging for the future. And again, countries are all going to figure out how do you get it out through other ways. I mean, what does Qatar do? They don't have beachfront property on the Gulf of Oman. Well, I was there on Monday. They're talking about increasing the number of pipelines that already go to some of their neighbors, including the UAE, Saudi Arabia, maybe down creating a new whole complex in the southern part of Oman, because it's not just shipping natural gas, it's then liquefaction, of course, so you can put it on an LNG carrier and send it to a country that will regas. But it's maybe to the Red Sea as well, so these dynamics are enormous.
Yeah.
And we want to be there with countries and with companies to help them find solutions.
And I think diversification,
No
resilience
Hardening.
in your energy
Yes.
systems,
Yep.
hardening, that's going to be the theme in the coming years, I think, for every country around the world
Absolutely.
as it looks at its
Yep.
energy mix
Absolutely.
and thinks about how it deploys or invests in energy.
Absolutely.
And investors like us want to be catching those trends and thinking about those trends.
And they'll
right?
be there. And I think we have a partnership we're
Right.
building, and so we look forward to doing that together. Absolutely.
Yeah. Want to ask you about leadership.
Sure.
What are the things that you look for that distinguish effective leaders in these complex times or
Sure.
in difficult
Great question.
conditions?
Sure. First, it depends where the person is. Again, if it's the strategic leader, there's one be-all and end-all, and that is the ability to get the big ideas right. The style that you use should be that which brings out the best in each of your individual direct reports. We're all different. I might need a pat on the back once a day. You only need one once a year.
Right.
I might need specific direction. You might need general guidance. So again, that's first. And then how do you bring out the best in the collective organization, in the overall unit, if you will? And it's different at every level. And one of the projects that I had was with a bunch of graduate students who had actually been under me in the war zone, said, we want to help you distill your strategic leadership construct and then flesh it out a good bit. And we'll create a website for that. So they do that. And if you go to belfercenter.org and search for Petraeus on strategic leadership, maybe you can put the link on the podcast.
For sure. I'd love to.
It lays all out what I've been talking about, but it then goes into what we call tactics, techniques, and procedures of leadership. I talk about leadership style. I talk about affirmative leadership. Now, this is not affirmative action. This is positive leadership and really thinking through.
Encouragement.
So think about it. Let's say you have a project that's due on Monday at noon, and the unaffirmative leader, so the negative leader or what have you, will say, Majid, you better have that thing on my desk at noon or I'll have a piece of your backside and it better be good. And, Or you can, it's Friday afternoon and I say, hey, Majid, the troops are already talking about your ideas. They say they're spectacular. I don't know if I'll be able to sleep on Sunday night. I'm so excited to see that report on my desk at noon. I mean, you've conveyed the reminder that you really need that at that time on that day, but you've done it in a much more positive fashion, a much more affirmative fashion. And there's a whole bunch of these in there as well. So those techniques actually matter, I think, also. And it might, I think, for those that are aspiring leaders, especially the closer you get to the top, the truth is that very few of us are truly going to be a real strategic leader. By the way, a founder and CEO of a startup, even if the workforce sits around one conference table, is a strategic leader.
Right.
Our daughter-in-law she's got a great startup. But, in a big corporation, there's really only a few. But the reality also is that many people help that strategic leader. They're helping him or her perform the 4 tasks, particularly when it comes, again, to getting the big ideas right, which is not something I never was hit on the head by a big idea formed like the apple that hit Newton on his head with his eureka moment. I get hit on the head by a seed of a big idea, and then you shape it. It's iterative. It's you try to be as inclusive as you can. You want everybody to think that they're contributing to this. They're inside the tent, because you know what happens if people are thinking they're outside the tent. So all of this is in that website, and it walks through not only what are the tasks, but also how do you perform them. And I think it'll be fun for some of the listeners of this podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that's really insightful and very helpful. I think we all are learning as we go along, and in leadership and styles, and everybody needs to find their way, right, that works for them.
Absolutely. Establish, reinforce the right culture. And what we put a huge premium on in the war zones in particular, especially the surge in Iraq, is that we want to be a learning organization, because the side that learns the fastest typically prevails in that kind of conflict.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting as well how we see leadership change as AI becomes more prominent as part of organizations, right? At ALTÉRRA, we have a strapline that is rebuild the future.
And you do. And you also power the future.
We're investing in the future, exactly. I wanted to hear from you, what makes you most positive about the future? And looking ahead, how do you see that technology, new investment models, and climate finance can shape our future economy?
Well, what excites me actually is innovation. If you look at what is really sustaining the U.S. economy, there's a lot of uncertainty in it. There have been a lot of on and off with tariffs, there's consumer sentiment, all these issues, some non-standard, and yet this economy just keeps growing. It just keeps powering on. And when you pull it apart, what you find out is that a very substantial part of our GDP growth is attributed to innovation. We are in the period of highest productivity growth in our lifetimes in the U.S. economy. And to a degree, it's somewhat unique in that regard. This world's largest economy that is sustained by innovation, and that innovation is exciting. I'm a personal venture investor because I enjoy supporting, helping, mentoring great young leaders who show the ability to perform the 4 tasks of a strategic leader. And that big idea is powerful. It's exciting. It's intriguing, has promise. So that really is important. And you get into these other areas. I mean, again, climate finance, climate investing, all we have, of course, an impact fund.
Right.
A lot of it's keyed. The metrics that we use are the Sustainability Development Goals of the United Nations. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And how will this stack up against those goals? By the way, we've always said that we want to do well while doing good. In other words, we obviously have to produce good returns for our investors or they won't trust us with their money. But we don't want to break the law, foul the whatever. We want to do good while doing well. With the impact fund, we say we want to do good. But while still doing well.
Yeah.
And it's doable and it's exciting, I think.
Yeah.
And again, the demands in this area in energy are so enormous. And we really haven't seen this manifest itself that much yet, with a couple of exceptions outside the United States, which is going to be the one, again, where 10% of all power is going to data centers.
Yeah. And that I feel very excited about our partnership in that sense.
Likewise.
We're going to be working together in the global south, investing in infrastructure in the developed world as well, where we're going to see this huge revolution when it comes to data centers, AI, reindustrialization in North America and Europe. And so I think that these are very, very exciting times for the future. General Petraeus, I want to say thank you very much. This has been a wonderful conversation.
The privilege is
so
mine.
insightful. And thank you for being our first guest.
A privilege.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.